Hi, I hope you're doing well. My name is Anthony. I am a member of Edible Campus Program's education team, and today I'm going to be teaching you about how to grow food hydroponically. We're going to be focusing on lettuce today. It's going to be a fun time. Here we go. So today's workshop, we're going to, or not today, I'm not sure when you're going to be viewing this, but during this workshop, we will learn about what hydroponics is, some benefits and costs of hydroponics, and also talk about different hydroponic systems. Um, and then we're going to set up our own hydroponic system using mason jars after the slideshow. Some materials you'll need to follow along the demonstration. Rockwool grow cubes, hydroponic clay pebbles, hydroponic plant food, water, wide mouth mason jars, plastic net cups or cup, black paper, scissors, tape, and a clear container with a lid. Um, it varies on how much of each you'll need, but the more mason jars you have, the more of the other materials you'll need. Mason jar is the essential part here. So for example, if you have 2 mason jars, you'll need 2 grow cubes, 2 plastic net cups, 2 black papers. Yeah, and we'll talk about the amounts for other stuff in a sec. So first off, what is hydroponics? Hydroponics is pretty much a method of producing food that involves growing food or growing plants without soil and primarily growing them using a water solution with nutrients dissolved in it. So that's what we're going to be doing with the mason jars. Instead of soil, it's going to be plant food, hydroponic plant food mixed into water that the lettuce is going to be soaking up through its roots. Yeah, that's basically what hydroponics is. It gets a little more complex when we talk about different systems. But there are some benefits of growing food hydroponically. Um, for one, farmers have complete control over hydroponic systems that they manage. They're able to manipulate things like pH and nutrients so that the plants get exactly what they need. They're able to maintain temperature and lighting schedules to improve plant production. They can create closed systems to use water more efficiently, in which the water that's not used by the plants is recycled, filtered into other plants. Um, and then production can increase in the same amount of space because you're using vertical space as opposed to horizontal space. As you see right here in the picture, if those are sprawled across the ground in rows, it would take up a lot more, or there would be um, less produce food that you're able to pack in the same amount of space. Crops can grow faster, and farms can exist in places that they otherwise couldn't. Hydroponics can allow us to create farms in locations where maybe soil conditions are too poor to support farming or space is limited, um, and that causes a farm to not be able to exist. No soil erosion happens when you grow food hydroponically because there's no soil being used. And there's less of a chance for pests, which is cool because then less of a need for pesticides, more likely to be organic produce. Let's see if I can get to the next slide here. Oh, that was the last slide. There's some costs of growing food hydroponically. It might be a little expensive when you're initially setting it up, and there's a lot of supervision required when you do it. One little thing can send your hydroponic system into peril, unfortunately. There's no soil to act as a buffer if it somehow the cycle somehow is off and water's not cycling when it's supposed to. And it's super dependent on electricity to pump water to these plants. So power outages can be super catastrophic. They might die a little faster. Waterborne disease is easier to spread since they're all sharing the same water and it's recycling. So if one plant is sick, that can potentially spread to all other plants that are drinking up the same water. No ecosystems are created when you're growing food hydroponically. There's no worms crawling around in the soil, no birds eating the worms or whatever eats the worms, and also no carbon sequestration as a result, because plants can't fixate it into the soil to be absorbed. Yeah. There's also different hydroponic systems. They get super complex, I've learned, but we're only going to be talking, or we're only going to do brief overview. So there's a wick system, water culture, ebb and flow, drip, nutrient film technique, and aeroponic. There's a lot of different variations of hydroponic systems, but all sort of are a variation or a combination of these 6 systems. Yeah, they get kind of complex, but most important thing to know between the different hydroponic systems is the distinction between passive and active. Um, Passive is more so reliant on like, I guess an active system relies on a pump to filter the water to all the plants, and a passive system maybe uses something like a wick to deliver the nutrients to the plants. So it's not being pumped. Yeah, that's the basic distinction between the two. What we're going to be using today with the mason jars is the Kratky method. It's created by Bernard Kratky, University of Hawaii. It's a passive system in which the plants are suspended over a reservoir of nutrient-rich water. You can kind of see it going on right here with this lettuce, wrapped in foil to keep the light out. Yeah, we're going to be talking about this more in a sec. And when we're thinking about hydroponics, it's important to think about the role that growing food hydroponically can play in our food system. It's kind of one part of a super complex solution. If you have the land and the opportunity to grow directly in the soil, that's kind of the best thing. It's super hard to mimic natural minerals, especially in like an aqueous solution that hydroponics requires. And growing in farmland allows carbon to be sequestrated, and it creates ecosystems as opposed to the hydroponic systems in like warehouses and stuff. It's the ideal situation. We'd like to have farmland, but unfortunately not everyone is privileged to have farmland. So if all you have is something like a patio or basement, that's awesome. You can grow there too. Hydroponics allows you to do that. It is kind of expensive, but if you have the means to do so, go crazy. It also, like we mentioned before, or like I mentioned before, allows for more opportunities where farming doesn't really make sense, like in industrial areas, crammed with warehouses. Maybe a warehouse can be converted into a farm. But yeah, that's pretty much, yeah, it's super complex, but that's a basic introduction to hydroponics and why it's important. So now I'm going to stop my share, and I'm going to show you guys how to set up the mason jars doing the Kratky method. So first thing you need is the Rockwell grow cube. I've allowed mine to soak in water for about 30 minutes, and that's the first step to this process. I kind of just skipped ahead a bit, but I was just letting it sit in a mug, just regular tap cold water for about 30 minutes. And after that 30 minutes are up, the next thing you're gonna want to do is grab your seeds. Oh, I don't think I put that on the materials list. You're gonna need lettuce seeds. I don't have lettuce seeds on me, so I'm gonna be using spinach. And then you also need to whip out that plastic or the container with clear container with a lid. That's going to be necessary for this step too. So I'm going to take my Rockwell cube out of the water after it's been soaking for about 30 minutes, place it in the container like this. And when you see your cube, you might notice there's a top side and a bottom side. You can kind of tell by this little ridge right here. There's a hole at the top. You want to poke your finger in and kind of make it a little bigger so that the seeds fit in there. Not necessary to do it on the bottom. That's where the roots are eventually going to poke out. So yeah, poke the hole in there. Now I'm going to be placing about 2 to 3 seeds. I'll do 2. I feel like I trust these seeds' ability to germinate. So I'm going to pop 2 spinach seeds in there. Preferably this would be lettuce, but like I said, I don't have seeds on me. So there, 2 are in there now. And the setting up process kind of takes a minute. Next step is to wait for these to germinate, which can take a minute. So you need this container and the cover to kind of create a mini greenhouse. And what I'm gonna do next is pour a little bit of water. I did spill some. It's all good, not that much. Just so that the bottom of the thing is kind of submerged. You can kind of see it. I did put too much actually, but I'll dump it later. Now I'm just gonna put this in a sunny location, keep the lid on, not fully closed, and wait for that to germinate. And you'll know that it's ready for the next step, moving it into the mason jar once the first set of true leaves begin to grow. And true leaves are pretty much the set of leaves that begin to grow after its initial set of leaves, if that makes sense. So I have this little Mexican sunflower right here. You can see the first set of true leaves growing from the middle, and then the little baby leaves that first sprouted right here. So when the lettuce grows or the spinach grows, whatever you're growing, you'll see these two first. But then when you see these two starting to form in the middle, the true leaves start to form. That's when you know you're ready to move it into the mason jar. So I'm going to show you how to do the rest of the process. Your seeds probably won't be ready to germinate, or your seeds probably won't be germinated by the end of you watching this video. But that's okay. You'll have this to check back on later. So feel free to use this as a reference. All right. Another good indicator, you want to wait for true leaves, but you also want to wait for roots to grow out the bottom of the cube. Like I said, they're going to be doing that. And you'll be able to see right here once the roots start to grow. Mine just put them in, so no roots yet. Gonna have to wait. Patience is key here. So next thing you want to do is create your little mason jar setup. So we're going to grab a mason jar. Mine's a little dirty. Sorry about that. And the black paper, scissors, and tape. So I'm going to have mine outside. You're probably going to have yours in a sunny area as well. And you want to make sure that no light gets in, and you don't want to make sure that the solution is exposed to light, because if it's exposed to light, there's a possibility that algae will grow, and that'll lead to a bunch of issues that you don't want. So to prevent that from happening, we're going to wrap the mason jar in some black paper. Yeah, so this black paper doesn't cover all the way, and there's excess at the bottom. So I'm going to cut right here, and then use the extra paper to cover that little gap. So as you can see, I've made my cut. I'm just going to cut it all the way through now. Cool. So now I'm going to tape the black paper to the jar in order to make sure no sun gets in and messes with my hydroponic plant food mixture. And then we're going to talk about how to set up the mixture in a sec. Cool. One side taped. Now I'm just going to do the other side. All right, now I'm going to take my extra paper to fill in this gap right here. There's still a little excess at the bottom, so I'm going to cut that part off because I'm not going to need it. At least not right now. Maybe I'll use it later. Okay, so now I'm just going to tape that part on. And there we go. My mason jar is ready for the plant food to go in. You can do this step while you're waiting for your seeds to germinate, but I wouldn't make the plant food until the seeds are germinated and they're ready to be put in the mason jar, because then they're just going to be sitting for a minute. But we'll move on to that step just so you guys know how to do it once the time comes. So we're going to create our hydroponic nutrient mixture. So we'll grab our plant food. Mine says to use 1 to 2 teaspoons per gallon of fresh water. A gallon is about 16 cups. I got an old plastic gallon water bottle, and I just filled it all the way to the top and put 1 to 2 teaspoons in. That's a pretty easy indicator. But yeah, so 16 gallons, just in case you don't have a big thing laying around, you can use a big pot and pour in 16 cups. Yeah, so I have mine ready here in a different mason jar. I measured it out so that I can just pour it into here. Yeah, so we're going to set it up. I don't have seeds to put in, but I'm going to do it for the purpose of the demonstration. So you're going to grab your little net cup, put it in the mouth like this, and yeah, so it's in there. And next up is to fill this with the hydroponic plant solution. I'm going to pour it in Maybe not on camera because I'm scared I will spill it in my room. But let's try it anyway. All right, that looks good. I pretty much just poured until the bottom of the cup right here is submerged. As you can see, it's kind of wet now. But I just, yeah, I poured until the bottom was submerged completely in water or in the plant food solution. So that's ready. It looks all good. Actually, I might want to pour a little more because of the net cups. I would say to the first little rim that you see from the bottom is where you should put the plant food in. I don't know if you can see, but I'm going to try to show you. Yeah, like that. Cool. So we're going to grab our clay pebbles now. The clay pebbles also help to block algae, and they fill in the gaps around the cube because the cube doesn't completely, it's a little small in relation to the net cup and the mason jar's mouth. So I'm going to put a little layer of the cubes on the bottom. Not too much, but just enough so that, let's see. Just enough so that the Rockwell cube pokes out over the rim of the lid, like it's able to be exposed to the light. So I would say like this is a good amount. On the bottom, I'll show you up close. So about that many, sorry, this is hard. Yeah, my angle's bad, but that many cubes, just enough so it pokes out. Now I'm gonna put my cube in for the sake of the demonstration, even though it's not ready. And what I'm gonna do next is get more clay pebbles and fill in the gaps around the side so that it's kind of set into place and none of the solution is exposed to light. This helps block out so you don't have algae growing or anything like that. Make sure that's all in there. Cool. So I'm gonna show you now. You can kind of see it's filled around and this thing is exposed. I could probably put it a little higher, but this will work out. Or it would work out if my seeds were ready. I'm gonna have to undo this, but it's okay. But yeah, that's pretty much how you set it up. And when you're waiting for, like when you initially transferred into here, one thing to look out for is that the cube might dry out because the roots aren't maybe established enough to fully reach the solution. So I would pay attention to see if it dries out. And if it does, you can just sprinkle a little bit of water on top to keep it evenly moist. Also, you might have to put more solution in depending on how much the plant is drinking up. And you can just check the bottom. And if you see that it's pretty empty in there, or if you lift it and just it feels light, it feels like there's no water in there or anything, that's a good indicator you could use more. But unless it completely dries out, don't worry about putting more in. And cool thing about lettuce is that it can regrow a few times. So once you harvest some, you can leave the roots established and it'll continue to regrow. It gets slightly more bitter with each regrow, but it's still possible, still cool. You'll have multiple harvests from one plant. And one last thing, I put more than one seed in here just for the purpose of improving my chances. And you might see that more than one plant is growing out, but you can only have one plant in this container. So if there's 2 or 3 sprouts, I would thin it out so there's only one. But you don't have to thin until you're putting them in here. I don't have any seedlings to thin right now. But yeah, I guess I'll show you here. So you only want one plant like this. If there were 2, I would thin one out before putting it into the mixture. Yeah, that's pretty much how you grow food hydroponically. Thank you for watching this video. Yeah, I hope you have a successful lettuce harvest / growing adventure. Have a nice day.